When Alex found out he had inherited his grandfather's farm, he wasn't sure how to feel. Growing up, Alex was always the city kid, the one who thrived in the urban jungle, surrounded by fast cars, flashy parties, and endless skyscrapers. The farm was just a distant memory, a place he'd visited a few times as a child, mostly out of obligation. But now, with his grandfather gone, the farm was his. One weekend, Alex decided it was time to escape the chaos of the city and drive out to the countryside to see what he had inherited. He didn't have high expectations. In his mind, the farm was probably run down, outdated, and in desperate need of a makeover. As he sped down the highway in his luxury car, he pictured himself stepping into a dusty, old farmhouse and giving the workers a list of changes to bring the place into the modern age. The city had taught him that everything needed constant upgrading, and he assumed the farm would be no different. But when Alex finally arrived, he was stunned. The farm was nothing like he had imagined. The fields were vibrant and green, the farmhouse looked well kept, and the whole place had an energy to it that took him by surprise. He parked his car and stepped out, breathing in the fresh, clean air. It felt strange to be surrounded by so much open space, with nothing but the sounds of birds and the rustling of leaves. It was a stark contrast to the city's constant noise, a silence that was almost unsettling at first, yet oddly calming. As Alex made his way toward the farmhouse, a group of workers noticed him and started walking over. He was taken aback by how relaxed they seemed. There was no stiff, formal greeting like he'd expected. Instead, they seemed comfortable, like they were part of a close-knit community. One of the workers, an older man with a friendly smile and calloused hands, stepped forward. "You must be Alex," the man said, offering his hand. "I'm João. Worked for your grandpa for years. We've heard a lot about you." Alex shook his hand, still a little surprised by how welcoming everyone was. He had expected them to be more reserved, maybe even a bit wary of their new boss. But instead, they treated him like an old friend, as if they had been waiting for this moment for a long time. João offered to show Alex around, and as they walked through the farm, Alex became more and more impressed. The workers clearly knew what they were doing. The farm was thriving, everything running smoothly. The crops were healthy, the animals well cared for, and the equipment up to date. It was clear his grandfather had left the farm in good hands. But what really caught Alex off guard was the pride the workers took in their work. They weren't just there for a paycheck, they genuinely cared about the farm and its success. João explained how Alex's grandfather had always treated the workers like family, making sure they were well compensated and respected. It was a relationship built on trust, and that trust had carried the farm through tough times. As João talked about the seasons, the soil, and the subtle rhythms of the farm, Alex began to realize how much he didn't know. His grandfather had been a man of the earth, someone who understood the land on a level Alex had never considered. The workers spoke of his grandfather with a kind of reverence that Alex found both comforting and intimidating. He could see that they didn't just work for his grandfather, they worked with him, side by side, year after year. The more João spoke about his grandfather, the more Alex felt a pang of guilt. He realized how little he truly knew about the man who had shaped this land, and the community that grew with it. As a child, he was too caught up in his own world, too eager to leave the farm and return to the city's excitement. Now, standing in the middle of this lush, thriving landscape, he regretted not spending more time with his grandfather, learning from him, understanding the depth of his connection to this place. The farm tour continued, and João took Alex to the old barn, which had been converted into a workshop. Inside, the walls were lined with tools, some modern and shiny, others old and worn, clearly well used and well loved. In the corner was a small, cluttered desk with a stack of notebooks, his grandfather's journals. João explained how Alex's grandfather would spend hours here, tinkering with new ideas, sketching plans for improvements, always thinking ahead to the future of the farm. Curiosity got the better of him, and Alex flipped open one of the journals. The pages were filled with meticulous notes on crop rotations, weather patterns, and experiments with different farming techniques. But what struck Alex most were the personal entries, reflections on the changing seasons, the joy of a good harvest, the challenges of a drought, and the deep satisfaction his grandfather felt knowing the farm was thriving. As they left the workshop, João pointed out some of the innovations Alex's grandfather had implemented over the years. He had always been ahead of his time, introducing sustainable practices long before they became a trend. He had built solar panels, rainwater harvesting systems, and even a small biogas plant that powered parts of the farm. These weren't just investments in the farm's future, they were a testament to his grandfather's foresight and dedication to the land. That night, Alex stayed in the old farmhouse, a place filled with memories he had only briefly glimpsed as a child. The house was warm and inviting, with the smell of wood and earth, a stark contrast to his sleek, modern apartment in the city. He spent hours going through his grandfather's letters, each one revealing more about the man he had been. The letters spoke of love for the land, the importance of community, and a deep understanding of the cycles of nature. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the fields, Alex made a decision. He wasn't going to sell the farm or try to change everything. Instead, he was going to learn from the workers, from João, and from the land itself. This farm had a history, a heartbeat, and for the first time, Alex realized that maybe, just maybe, he was meant to be a part of it. But Alex didn't just want to be part of it, he wanted to understand it, to contribute to it. The next morning, instead of driving back to the city, he decided to stay for a while. He swapped his designer clothes for a pair of worn jeans and boots that João lent him. He spent his days learning the ropes, waking up before dawn to help with the chores, planting crops, feeding the animals, and listening to the workers' stories about his grandfather. Through these experiences, Alex started to see the farm through a different lens. It wasn't just about making a profit or keeping things running smoothly, it was about community, resilience, and the kind of quiet, steady leadership his grandfather had embodied. The workers respected him not because he was their boss, but because he had always been there, working alongside them, understanding their challenges, and celebrating their successes. In the evenings, Alex would return to the farmhouse, exhausted but content, and continue reading his grandfather's letters and journals. Each one revealed more about the man his grandfather was, a man who valued hard work, humility, and the simple pleasures of life. Slowly, Alex began to feel a deep connection to the farm, one that went beyond obligation or inheritance. This place was becoming part of him, and he was becoming part of it. Weeks turned into months, and Alex found himself making decisions that reflected his new understanding of the farm and its people. He invested in sustainable practices, not just because it was good for the environment, but because it was what his grandfather would have done. He started hosting community events, bringing together the workers and their families, strengthening the bonds that had been the foundation of the farm's success. And in all of this, Alex discovered something unexpected. He was happier here, in this quiet, steady life, than he had ever been in the city. The farm had given him something he didn't know he was missing, a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. One day, as he walked through the fields with João, watching the sun set over the land that was now his, Alex realized that he had found his place in the world. The city would always be there, with its excitement and opportunities, but this farm, this legacy, was where he truly belonged. As the months passed, Alex found himself deeply embedded in the rhythm of farm life. He no longer felt like an outsider. He was involved in every aspect of the farm's operations, from planting and harvesting to managing the finances and planning for the future. The workers, who once saw him as the city kid who would never last, now treated him as one of their own. One evening, as Alex was closing up the barn, João approached him with a thoughtful expression. "You know, your grandfather used to say that the land chooses its caretaker, not the other way around. I think this land has chosen you, Alex." The words struck a chord in Alex. He had always thought of his inheritance as something that had happened to him, something he had to deal with. But now, he realized that he had been chosen for this, that he was meant to carry on his grandfather's legacy. With this new sense of purpose, Alex began to think about the future in a different way. He started attending agricultural conferences, learning about the latest techniques and technologies that could help the farm thrive even more. He also began to think about how he could give back to the community that had supported his grandfather for so many years. Alex decided to establish a scholarship fund for the children of the farm workers, allowing them to pursue higher education if they chose. He also set up a program to teach sustainable farming practices to local farmers, ensuring that his grandfather's commitment to the land would extend beyond the borders of his own farm. The transformation in Alex didn't go unnoticed by his friends back in the city. When he occasionally visited, they would comment on how different he seemed, more grounded, more at peace. They couldn't quite understand it, but Alex didn't mind. He knew that they would never fully grasp what the farm had come to mean to him. One day, as Alex was walking through the fields, he came across an old oak tree that his grandfather had planted when he was a young man. The tree was massive, its branches stretching out like arms embracing the sky. Alex sat down under the tree, feeling the cool shade and the rough bark against his back. He looked out over the farm, the fields stretching out to the horizon, the sun setting in a blaze of colors. In that moment, Alex felt a deep sense of contentment. He realized that his life had come full circle. The farm, which had once seemed like a burden, had become his greatest joy. The legacy of his grandfather was now his to carry forward, and he was ready. As he sat there, Alex thought about the future, about the generations that would come after him. He knew that the farm would continue to thrive, that the land would keep producing, and that the community his grandfather had built would remain strong. And he knew that he would be there, guiding it all, just as his grandfather had done before him. In the end, Alex understood that the farm wasn't just a piece of land, it was a living, breathing entity, a part of his family, and a part of him. It was a place where memories were made, where lives were lived, and where a legacy would continue for generations to come. And Alex was ready to be the caretaker of that legacy, to nurture it, to protect it, and to pass it on to those who would come after him. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the fields, Alex stood up, dusted off his jeans, and walked back to the farmhouse. He felt a sense of pride and responsibility, but also a deep, abiding peace. He was home.